So with the election just a few days away, I find myself wondering about all the things that could happen next. You know, it's a funny thing. Whether it's within our personal lives, the world at large, or in a political context, chaos is often found in abundance when order is being sought, as the consequence of one demands the other to come forward, and back and forth we go. Although residing on opposite sides of the spectrum, order and chaos are inextricably linked together in a torrid swirl of unpredictable nature. They say that if chaos was the law of nature, then order was the dream of man, and that right there is most certainly true. The powers that be dream of creating order, their order, even if it means they have to create the chaos themselves. As we know, one of the more famous political sayings is that you never let a good crisis go to waste. They view these moments as an opportunity to exploit fear, and ultimately to move the masses in a direction that aligns with their objective. Authority, when first detecting chaos at its heels, will entertain the vilest of schemes to save its orderly facade. And we witness this eternal struggle play out day after day. Current events often remind us that the control we believe we have is purely an illusion, and that with every moment we teeter against oblivion. In general, that's not always a bad thing either. The unpredictable nature of our reality is what gives life that spark. There's beauty buried within those moments. A fleeting moment of uncertainty could give you new meaning, or a new understanding of what it means to actually be alive. As life is nothing without a little bit of chaos to make it interesting, right? However, as I said, in a political sense, chaos can be a tool, and once put into practice, the cascading effects are inevitable, for the world they seek to create is dependent upon it. Their entire scheme is to use fear of a chaotic world to convince the masses to give up their rights. Basically, their entire worldview is based upon a desire to control human behavior through digital restraints. Now, if that is the goal, then the broken fragments of society are just a natural consequence to their actions. As they seek to break civilization apart in hopes of building back better, ironically, they present an opportunity to us. Yes, in the space between chaos and shape. Well, that's where we're offered another chance. You know, maybe all of this was unfortunately necessary to get to our actual destination. As they lament and howl about their desire to build back from the ashes of the old, well, perhaps they are actually right about something. There's an old saying that I'm sure you've all heard before. Sometimes things have to break before you can fix them. Well, the system is broken, and has been for a long time. But we've seen this wanton destruction accelerate since at least 2016. They've broken the institutions, the universities, the corporate sector, the media, the court system, and really tried to shatter the individual, in hopes of gluing our shattered pieces together into some sort of collective, an abhorrent amalgamation of what we used to be, a sort of Frankenstein monster, entirely unrecognizable to the principled and moral soul. But as I said, it's not all doom and gloom, alright? They have mistakenly presented us with an opportunity as well. We can pick up those broken pieces, and instead of adhering to this globalist vision of dystopian nightmares, we can put the pieces back together ourselves, in lieu of our own personal pursuit of beauty and freedom. We are living through what is commonly referred to as the fourth turning. It's a cyclical event that plagues us based upon generations. Every 70 to 100 years or something like that, well, this cycle plays out. A hallmark of the fourth turning is, yeah, you guessed it, breakdown and chaos. And this is where we are, a fork in the road, but there's a solution to be had. They say when there is no order to be found, we must adapt ourselves to the requirements of chaos instead. So, my suggestion to you is just that, to adapt, and fast. Because, right now, we're on a crash course. We're approaching the moment in the symphony, when we're about to be hit with a crescendo of political rhetoric, a cacophony of sound, layered with melodies of authoritarianism, masked with the hypnotic nuance of political messaging and propaganda. Yeah, that's right. After this election, we're all going to remember the 5th of November. Now, in regard to this election, sadly for us, I believe we've been set up for chaos. And tonight, I just want to run through some possibilities and some of the stories. So, possibility number 1, everything goes off without a hitch. The people who lose the election moan and groan a little bit, but otherwise it's a standard transfer of power, and we all move on with our lives. But is anyone really optimistic about that? I don't think so. And the reason? Well, they're planting seeds of doubt within every single mind, right now. The media is consistently setting the stage for some sort of nefarious activity. I'm sure by the time this video comes out, there's going to be plenty more examples too. However, let's go over some of the crazy stories from the past week or so. Anyway, they started off with a ton of stories about how the election will take days or weeks to conclude. The Secretary of State for multiple swing states all said the same thing. It's going to take a long time to count.
Election day comes in an anxious time. Why should Americans have confidence in this election?
We have tons of people, processes, and policies in place in all 50 states in the district to assure that the outcome of the election is correct.
Correct, but maybe not as fast as our nerves would like.
So on election night, don't expect to know the winner?
After that, they pointed out that hundreds of thousands of U.S. citizens living abroad. Well, they say that those mail-in ballots might be the difference maker. Yeah, and I'm a bit suspicious about that one. And then we got numerous videos, media segments, and first-hand accounts of issues with voting stations in multiple states. And I'm pretty sure there's been about a dozen reports so far. But why don't we jump over to Dominion? Because yeah, apparently there's a nationwide issue with their voting machines, and it's just being discovered right now.
Issues with the programming of the VATs with specifically
Yes.
from Dominion.
Mm-hmm.
Why was that only caught in the past few days, and why can't it be fixed? I saw the release with the
Yeah, this is a nationwide issue with Dominion voter access terminals in the counties that use them. And the voter access terminals, of course, not all the machines, just the ones that are accessible, have an issue with the straight party voting and a programming issue that's again affected the machines nationwide. And I think all of us that use Dominion machines were unhappy to learn about this during the testing period and as early voting began. So we're working with Dominion to seek accountability on that front, and also are working with our clerks to ensure voters are aware of this programming issue that will require them to ensure they are voting every section on the ballot.
Do you think it's a bigger issue in Michigan because we do allow voters to cross over in ways that a lot of other states don't? Because
we have straight party. It's not struck me as I've talked to my other colleagues in other states. They're just as upset about it as we are. So, yeah, or surprised, I think. Yeah.
Ironically, as all of that is happening, Dominion has also put out a message on social media claiming they are ready to sue anybody questioning the election into oblivion, as asking questions, even with verified issues being reported, apparently is not permitted. Unless, of course, you're a Democrat, and then I guess, I don't know, it's totally fine. In fact, they have already been making the rounds to plant that seed of doubt, claiming that Republicans are trying to steal the election.
Now, when the two major takeaways from a 6-hour-long big closing message rally 8 days out from Election Day, or 9 days out, I guess, yesterday, are about how racist you are and speculation about your secret plans to steal an election, it's pretty clear you don't have a whole lot else going for you. And at the end of the day, this is all very revealing about what Trump and his team are thinking right now. It tells us that they think they can win like this. They think they can close out this campaign on racism and fear and hate. They think that will win. They think that will work. But if that doesn't work, then don't you worry. Trump has a secret plan with Mike Johnson. That's what last night told us. Hatred is the closing message, and conspiring with Mike Johnson seems to be the backup plan.
Congressman, we're up against 7 o'clock, so just a yes or no answer. You're saying you believe that Donald Trump has a plan with Mike Johnson already to try to overturn the presidential election?
I think the secret yesterday that he referenced very likely may relate to his compact with Mike Johnson as a backup plan for when he loses to overturn this election on January 6th.
Man, it is amazing how quickly they change their tune. So yeah, if you question 2020, you're an insurrectionist that needs to be re-educated. But now, they're right back to questioning elections again, and without a single ounce of self-awareness. They fail to even see the irony. They even brought out Victoria Nuland to say that Russia is working to steal the election again. Yeah, again, because they're still claiming 2016 was stolen too.
Third election in a row in which Russia has tried to interfere to try to get Trump into the White House. How do you assess the magnitude and the type of interference they're attempting this year compared to what they've done in his previous two elections?
Well, as you said earlier, Rachel, he's at it again. This time he's not even trying to hide his his hand, and he has far more sophisticated tools. You know, his AI is better, so he can make these fake videos. He has done things like spend $10 million trying to buy American influencers and get them parroting his lines and not even know it's happening. But he's also got a brand new, very, very powerful tool, which is Elon Musk and X. You know, in 2020, the social media companies worked hard with the U.S. government to try to do content moderation, to try to catch this stuff as it was happening. But this time we have Elon Musk talking directly to the Kremlin and ensuring that every time the Russians put out something like this, it gets 5 million views on X before anybody can catch it. So it's quite dangerous.
Yeah, deja vu. Either way, no matter who wins, expect some fireworks. That's all I'm saying. Without a doubt, Democrats are going to challenge the results despite the multi-year campaign demonizing that same very act. Kamala Harris has openly said that they're already building teams of lawyers for that specific reason.
We've got 2 weeks to go, and I'm very much grounded in the present in terms of the task at hand, and we will deal with election night and the days after as they come, and we have the resources and the expertise and the focus on that as well.
So you have teams ready to go? Is that what you're saying? Are you thinking about that as a possibility?
Of course.
The legal battles have already begun. Lawyers could have more say than voters. Politico reports Kamala has hundreds of lawyers on call in all 50 states. Her massive legal team's already waging electoral war in the courts. One official boasted about winning 9 out of 10 cases that have already been decided, while assembling what they're calling the biggest voter protection operation in presidential campaign history. And when a Democrat says voter protection, that usually means they're changing the rules. This could throttle the swing states and cause us to lose even more faith in our elections. Today in Georgia, a judge ruled that election officials have to certify results, even if voter fraud is suspected. And around the state, Democrats are suing to prevent drop box surveillance, hand counting ballots, and voter ID protections. Why are Democrats trying to make elections less secure? Especially while many states across the country are finding thousands of people who aren't citizens on the voter rolls.
Now, if Republicans challenge anything, lawfare will commence, and the de facto Gestapo at the DOJ will indict everybody. There's little doubt about that too. We've been here before, right?
We just want free and fair elections. Democrats are trying to loosen the rules and get Republicans to certify the results of an election that hasn't happened yet.
Will you accept the election results of 2024 no matter what happens, Senator? Will you accept to commit to the election results in this election cycle no matter who wins? Just simply yes or no.
Will you commit to accepting the results of this year's election?
In 2024, will you certify the election results? Do you plan to object, or will you accept the results regardless of who wins the election?
Asking you to accept the results of an election before the election, it's like a waiter demanding you agree that the dinner was good before it was served. And if a Republican says, well, let's make sure everything's fair and square before we certify, you're called a threat to democracy. But now that Trump's up in the polls, Democrats are saying Trump's already stealing the election. Democrat Congressman Jamie Raskin told Axios he definitely doesn't assume that Trump would use free, fair, and honest means to secure a victory. Trump is doing whatever he can to try to interfere with the process. And it's not just Raskin. Another Democrat from Illinois says this: I don't know what kind of shenanigans he is planning. We would have to, in any election, make sure that all the rules have been followed. Now, if Democrats really want a fair fight, why are they working so hard to change all the rules?
And at the same time as that's happening, I'd bet the manufactured riots will begin. Pure chaos, basically. But my point, really, is that they want the count to be close enough to elicit doubt, and then the real games can begin. This is why the saying too big to rig exists, and why I believe it's important to ensure your voice is heard. So yeah, double check. I'm pretty sure this is also the main reason corporate polls are so close. Some even saying it's a virtual tie, because it doesn't quite match public perception, does it? Well, no, I don't think it does. And it's because the point is not to be accurate, but to set the stage for contesting the results. This comes in many forms as well. So they have mail-in ballots and lack of verification. This includes a lawsuit in Virginia to keep non-citizens on the voter rolls. Now, the Supreme Court did overturn that, but the point remains, they are actively trying to ensure verification of citizen status is contested. I mean, check out this situation happening in Ohio. It's the same thing.
Frank LaRose today about the election-related lawsuit he filed against the Biden administration.
LaRose claims the Department of Homeland Security failed to give Ohio access to federal citizenship verification records that are needed to prevent those non-citizens from voting. Let's get to 10 TV political reporter Doug Petcash, who interviewed LaRose about why he is pushing this effort.
Yeah, that's right, Angela and Yolanda. Secretary LaRose says the state can use the Federal Systematic Alien Verification and Entitlements, or SAVE, database to verify citizenship, but says the Biden administration is denying Ohio access to 3 other federal databases.
Now, a different judge tossed out a lawsuit in Pennsylvania attempting to ensure verification for ballots by military members and voters who live overseas. There is no logical explanation for this stuff besides deliberately trying to weaken election security. In Pennsylvania again, we have videos of fake election workers and police closing polling stations, telling people to go home and come back later, which, by the way, is not legal. And then we have Colorado, who posted a photo of the passwords to the voting machines.
A final question. This is not the first time that your office has made mistakes that have damaged voters' confidence in our elections. In 2022, your office sent out mailers to 30,000 non-citizens inviting them to register to vote. They, of course, are not eligible to register to vote. That same year, your office used Colorado's ballot tracking system to send messages to specific Coloradans encouraging them to vote when, in fact, they had already voted, causing confusion that had to be cleaned up by the county clerks. And now this leak of the voting system passwords. Given your office's repeated errors that have damaged confidence in our elections, which you say is paramount, will you resign?
Absolutely not, Kyle. And I just want to, you're unfairly characterizing and leaving out some crucial information.
And that's a hell of a mistake. And yeah, that's because it's not a mistake, it's subversion. What's crazy is that some of these quote-unquote issues are happening to both sides, both parties.
Shelby County Election Commission member Benicia Kimbrough says several voters reported at least one incident at 10 to 12 precincts across the county. Representatives G.A. Hardaway and Antonio Parkinson, state lawmakers, both on the ballot and part of the Shelby County Democratic Caucus, say they received several calls from voters today. Here's a list of some of the voting sites provided to Action News 5 where voters said they had difficulty pressing one candidate. They said that their vote would change from the Democratic candidate to the Republican candidate.
The thing is, I believe it plays directly into their little scheme. If both sides have glaring issues, well, it's a perfect situation to ensure doubt. Either way, no matter the truth, no matter who wins, no matter the outcome, it's contested results and doubt across the board. Ultimately, I think we end up here, and I believe Mike Benz put it well.
So is your sense that on, say, January 20th, if Trump does win clearly in the election, is your sense that on January 20th, Trump will be inaugurated or no?
This period between November 5th and January 6th is going to be extremely intense. If Trump wins, my sense is that you will see street paramilitary, left-wing / never Trump, right even potentially. You're going to see this sort of summer 2020 style riot force start to break out on the streets. The media is going to portray them as pro-democracy groups who are protesting the illegitimacy of the Trump Electoral College victory. So that's going to shut down the country. It's going to start terrorizing people. It's going to start preventing people from being able to communicate. You're going to see pressure put on the social media companies, extreme pressure put on by the Justice Department, put on by the advertiser networks. You're going to see this crisis response. It's going to feel like this country is, it's going to feel like the day after January 6th for 2 months if Trump does indeed win the Electoral College, in order for them to prime the pump for their extraordinary actions on January 6th.
He also says at the end, the fear-mongering, the lies, the narrative is all about setting the stage for their incredible actions on January 6th, 2025. And what exactly is he referring to? Well, to understand that, you just have to watch this clip of Jamie Raskin laying out the plan.
Put into the Constitution can slip away from you very quickly, and the greatest example going on right now before our very eyes is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which they're just disappearing with a magic wand, as if it doesn't exist, even though it could not be clearer what it's stating. And so, they want to kick it to Congress, so it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025 to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but these justices who have not many cases to look at every year, not that much work to do, a huge staff, great protection, simply do not want to do their job and interpret what the great 14th Amendment means.
Claim he's disqualified on January 6th, 2025, and then give all politicians bodyguards in Civil War conditions. I mean, they're openly talking about it. Civil War conditions, huh? Sounds ominous, and that's because it is. Which brings us to this little development right here. First, I'm going to openly talk about it, and then I'll get to the fact check. The Defense Department, with a stroke of a pen, has quietly codified its right to deploy lethal force against its own citizens. The reissue of Directive 5240.01 is a declaration of intent. The military, an entity designed for external enemies, now turns its gaze inward, poised to act with deadly precision when the inevitable clash erupts. This is by design. They anticipate conflict. End of quote. So, yeah, pretty crazy, right? Now, the military even held a little training exercise at the White House practicing for what seems to be evacuations with Black Hawk helicopters. Yeah, check this out. And I quote again, "If anything happens, they will strike with the full force of a war machine built to crush foreign adversaries, but now aligned to dismantle internal dissent." The facade of representative government crumbles as the state arms itself, not just with weapons, but with the legal and bureaucratic tools to enact violence under the guise of quote-unquote order. What was once unthinkable is now written, approved, and ready to be executed. This is not preparation for defense. This is preparation for domination. Be warned, when the state moves in silence, it's because it expects resistance. Martial law was always the goal. End of quote. Now, that may be true. However, this raises some interesting questions. Is it really about U.S. citizens? Well, if you remember, we had warnings about an October 7th style attack on U.S. soil. Seeing as a ton of nefarious actors and dangerous people have been hand-delivered into the heart of America by Joe Biden via their immigration resettling plan, well, let's just say that situation doesn't sound too crazy to me. For example, did you hear about this? We have Nasir Tahiti, who was arrested on federal charges over an alleged Election Day mass murder plot, after conspiring with a terrorist organization and actually obtaining firearms and ammunition. So this guy, Nasir Tahiti, was actually from Afghanistan, and he came to the US after the Afghanistan debacle. However, it was revealed that while he was living in Afghanistan, he actually worked for the CIA. Yeah, what are the odds of that? Well, considering it's the CIA, pretty damn good, I guess. These would-be terrorists always seem to have ties to our intel agencies or the feds, either being egged on in chat rooms, working directly with them in the past, or the feds actually fund and coordinate their acquisition of weapons, almost every damn time. But we do have to ask ourselves, how expansive is this plot? Nothing would surprise me at this point, that's for sure. I know. Let's get to the fact check. And I quote, "Despite online rumors, the updated Department of Defense Directive 5240.01 does not give the military power to use force against Americans. The directive only clarifies that military intel can support local law enforcement if the Secretary of Defense authorizes it." End of quote. So basically, that little provision was always there, but they just narrowed the scope and changed who could authorize it? That doesn't really make it any better, does it? But why don't we take a moment and read directly from the source? And then maybe you could explain this to me, because I don't know, it seems pretty clear. And I quote, "Assistance in responding with assets with potential for lethality. Any situation in which it is reasonably foreseeable that providing the requested assistance may involve the use of force that is likely to result in lethal force, including death or serious bodily injury." End of quote. Alright, I don't know. Am I misinterpreting that? Please let me know. Because, yeah, as I said, that seems pretty clear.
Why would there suddenly be a need to refine the rules on U.S. military intelligence spying on Americans? A few weeks of pivotal election. Why did they feel the need to add the potential use of those assets using lethal force just a few weeks before that election? Well, we asked the Pentagon to clarify, and we got back an email that was very similar to the fact sheet they recently gave to Congress. We obtained a copy of that fact sheet. So this is apparently a nothing burger. It's just business as usual. Well, this is the official explainer to Congress and explainers to lowly outlets such as us. The response they gave us stated, and I quote, "The reissue directive does not reflect any change towards the DoD's view toward its role in supporting civil authorities, to include law enforcement. Rather, it provides clarification and delineates the approval authorities for activities conducted by the defense intelligence components." While the paragraph that has been most frequently referenced on social media is new to this directive, it does not reflect any change to DoD's policy regarding the use of lethal force by DoD personnel. That is addressed in DoD D 5210.56, arming and the use of force. Revisions of DoD issuances are routine and ensure that departmental policies continue to be consistent with law and the executive branch policy, and that they clearly articulate departmental policy. The release was in no way timed in relation to the election or any other event. Right. There was a bit more. We have the full statement up at glennbeck.com if you want to read it. But let me just summarize. Nothing to see here. The timing on the election is just a coincidence. And even though they added scary words, it doesn't change the meaning. And the DoD directive that they listed shows up as business as usual. DoD 5210.56. Now, what the hell is that? Well, here it is. And to me, this looks just like guidelines for the military that do security around their own bases and things like that. Now, is it just me, or why is this being used as the example? This just is business as usual. Could be nothing, could be something. We really don't know. The government language as usual is so full of bureaucratic bullcrap, it's impossible to detect. This is a recent fact check done by the University of Washington. They state that, quote, "the spread of this story is due to a data void." In other words, nobody's telling anything, so we don't know, so people speculate. At any rate, I find it suspicious given the left's recent January 6th war game and what they discussed. Were these revisions made because of this war game? Just to reiterate one more time, everyone was briefed, including the Pentagon and Congress and the White House. Is there something being planned for Certification Day? I don't think so, but I don't know anymore.
I'll say one other thing. President Harris said today in her post, in her speech, she said that President Trump was going to turn the U.S. military against the American public and use the public to promote his agenda. How many of you think that is true? Well, what's interesting to me is that the Biden-Harris administration has done something 2 weeks ago that has never been done in American history, which is to send exactly lethal force, to send a directive to the Pentagon, changing the law to make it legal for the U.S. military to use lethal force against American citizens on American soil. Technically, now it's legal for the U.S. military under this directive. It will become legal for the U.S. military to shoot and kill Americans who engage in political protests because they disagree with policies in the White House. I'm not making this up. Any of you can look it up. This is a Democratic initiative. This did not come during the Trump administration. This did not come from Donald Trump. It came from the Democratic Party. And that's why I left the Democratic Party.
U.S. military now is authorized to kill Americans on U.S. soil. That can't be possible.
Yeah.
This would open up the door for the careless use, and if more frequent and legal. It'll be legal now, so nobody will have to worry about that. Send in the troops. We need you to shoot a couple of these people. Yeah. They're opposing our policies. They're demonstrating against COVID rules or something they'll come up with. So I think it's very, very dangerous.
Responding with assets with potential for lethality, and I underline this, I highlighted it, or any situation where it is reasonably foreseeable that providing the requested assistance may involve the use of force that is likely to result in lethal force, including death or serious bodily injury. I'm sorry to bog the discussion down with that, Dr. Ball, but I really wanted to hone in on this is their actual document. It's not just someone's analysis.
However, what could trigger such a thing? Well, it just so happens they are setting the stage for that too, and I quote, "The U.S. intelligence warns extremists inspired by conspiracy theories pose major threat to the 2024 election."
Intelligence agencies are warning of threats of violence in the upcoming election. In a joint intelligence bulletin, agents from the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security are warning law enforcement agencies that domestic violent extremists are seeking to terrorize and disrupt the vote. Let's get more now from NBC's Ken Delanian. What more can you tell us about this warning, Ken?
Good morning, Anna. The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security are warning in this new intelligence bulletin of the heightened risk of lone wolf attacks by domestic extremists motivated by election-related conspiracy theories, including beliefs in widespread voter fraud and their hatred of their political opponents. This will surprise no one who's been paying attention, but it's significant that these agencies are putting this out to local law enforcement a week before the election. The new unclassified bulletin says the goal of these attacks would be to terrorize and disrupt the vote. And to be clear, this document does not describe intelligence about any specific threat. It talks about a general atmosphere of anger and misinformation that could prompt unstable people to engage in threats or violence. And of course, we've already seen that in recent weeks with a series of arrests for election threats, including a man in Philadelphia who allegedly threatened to skin election workers alive. And remember last week, police in Phoenix arrested a person in connection with a mailbox fire that damaged around 20 ballots. The report identified potential targets of violence to include candidates, elected officials, election workers, members of the media, and judges involved in election cases. The potential threats include physical attacks and violence at polling places, ballot drop boxes, voter registration locations, and rallies and campaign events. And of course, Anna, the report doesn't say this, but it's obvious that a lot of these extremists are driven by years of lies about the election, 2020 election, by Donald Trump and his allies.
A very, very important warning. Ken Delanian, thank you for bringing us that.
Yeah. So, and I quote again, mainstream media reports that U.S. intelligence agencies are warning of potential violence on Election Day, with the FBI and Department of Homeland Security raising alarms about domestic violent extremists, a term often used to imply Trump supporters, isn't it? Anyway, authorities claim these threats stem from individuals angered by alleged election fraud and driven by animosity toward political opponents. And it kind of sounds, I don't know, but it kind of sounds like they're setting up a false flag operation, and they're setting it up in a way that they can blame it on Trump supporters. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Anyway, I'll leave you with this, and I quote, "Despite the conviction that our era is revolutionary, we must also recognize that under the appearance of movement and development, we are in fact living in complete stasis. There is undoubtedly much chaos and violence. There is technical progress. There are social and political experiments. But in reality, our world is static. And that's because its structure remains absolutely fixed, and its development unfolds along a completely expected path." End of quote. Well, it's my hope that this election will finally break us free from the chains of bureaucracy and shatter the so-called deep state into 1,000 pieces. Because it is only then that we can achieve actual change and realign ourselves toward liberty. Ultimately, what's going to happen? I don't know. I have no idea. But I suppose we're going to find out real soon, won't we? But just keep this in mind. Everything is set up in a way that elicits imagery of a powder keg, and the U.S. establishment seems hell-bent on lighting the match. Until next time, once again, this is HelioWave. If you like the content, like, comment, and subscribe. Share the video if you want to. If you're in a position to, consider subscribing on Locals, or you could use PayPal. As always, make sure you disobey those true fascistas, and yes, I do hope you have a good night.